Welcome back. We're going to be working on Module 5 and Module 6 in these next two sections. Modules 5 and 6 are related. They're both on collecting data. One is on observations and one is on experiments. We're going to start with observations first. So the first question is, what type of study is the focus of this module? And this is about observations. So we're doing observational studies. And in this section, there's not a lot of computation. We're not doing any calculations. We won't be using StatCrunch. We're basically talking about definitions and determining information. How do we determine whether something's an observation or whether something's an experiment, and what kind of conclusions can we make from that? The first question here now we have that's regarding this section is, what's a representative sample? A representative sample, so not just what's a sample, but a representative sample is one that is a subset of the population that reflects the characteristic of the population that we're concerned about. So when you want something to be representative, you want it to be a picture of what the actual population looks like. Let's say I'm talking about the population of the United States and I want to get a representative sample. I wouldn't want to just take a sample of people from Alaska, because maybe the people in Alaska have views that are different than people in New York or Washington, D.C. I would want to get a sample that is representative of the entire United States. So maybe I would want to get people from every state, something like that. Now, the way in which we gather our sample is called a sampling plan. It's a description of how we're going to choose our sample. Are we going to use a phone book and randomly grab 100 people from a phone book? Kind of outdated now. Are you going to, let's say I'm talking about all the students at Napa Valley College, are you going to go to the registrar's office, get a list of all 5,000 students, use a random number generator to select 100? Are you going to break the Napa Valley students by sophomores or freshmen and then sample within that? What kind of sample are you going to do? This is our sampling plan. Bias is a big word in statistics, and we actually all have our own bias based on our life experiences, where you grew up. You may not know it, but Harvard actually has, I think it's a website called Implicit Bias, where you can go to and you can take different exams or quizzes about yourself to determine what your bias is, like based on the picture, select. And so we all come in with our own biases. I'm not sure what the plural of bias is, if it's biases or bias just in general, goose geese, whatever. For me, I know I have a bias towards numbers. Whenever I'm going to write an exam and I'm pulling numbers, I'm going to stick to the same ones. If I'm exaggerating, I'm going to use 79. 79 for some reason is my go-to number. If I'm doing single digits, it's either 3 or 7. You'll find that you have things that you are gravitated towards as well. So a bias is when you systematically favor certain outcomes. Let me give you an example of a sample that has bias. If I wanted to gather information on people in Napa and I randomly select people with landlines, I am systematically favoring people with landlines whose opinions might be different than those who don't have landlines. And think about the people that have landlines. To generalize, most people who have landlines in their phones, those are phones that plug into the wall, are older. Typically, somebody who is younger will have just a cell phone. And so I'm eliminating, or I'm creating bias because I'm overrepresenting people who might be of an older age, and I'm underrepresenting those who are maybe of a younger age because they don't have landlines. So I'm introducing bias into that sample. When we take a voluntary response sample, that is when people volunteer to respond. This is a sample where you choose whether you want to respond or not. Every single day, not exaggerating, every single day I'm asked to participate in a survey. Anytime you go to a website, anytime you call a company, anytime you log on to something, surveys will pop up. Let's say you call a customer service line, they'll say, please stay on the line and take a 1 or 2 minute survey. If you go to a website, give me your opinion. How did I do? You're always asked to volunteer. And voluntary response, maybe sometimes that's the only type of sample you can get is people who volunteer. And there's ways that you can try and randomize to work with the volunteers. Like if you're in a medical study, you have to get volunteers, but then you can randomly assign to the treatments and experiments. Talk about that later. But voluntary response is typically not the best because the people who are volunteering, well, when you get that survey online that asks you, or when you call in and they ask you to participate, the people that do typically have a strong opinion. And that strong opinion is either going to be strongly positive or more often strongly negative. So if somebody's pretty pissed, they're going to want to go ahead and share about that experience. That's the thing. You have a good experience, you tell one person. If you have a bad experience, you tell 10. Something along those lines. So I caution you to take that information with a grain of salt. When you're reading reviews, when you're reading Yelps, when you're reading Rate My Professor, are those people representative of the entire population, or are they someone who has been mad because they got caught cheating, or mad because the manager didn't comp their meal, or something like that? So those people are voluntarily sharing their information, typically because they are opinionated one way or another. I never, when I get something that pops up online that says, hey, do you want to participate in this survey? I'm typically like, no, I don't want to. I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I'm just kind of meh, so I don't do it. So think about that when you're reading information that other people have shared on Yelp or on those other review sites. A convenient sample is just that. A convenient sample is where the person who is interviewing chooses who they want to be part of the sample. But let's say I own an ice cream store. And so I go stand in front of my own ice cream store and I ask the people that are coming into my ice cream store whether they like ice cream or not. And then I can say 10 out of 10 people say they love ice cream. Well, I only ask people who are going into the ice cream store. So don't you think that people who are going into the ice cream store are going to like ice cream? That's like asking somebody, standing at the entrance of a football game and asking people if they like football or not, or what their favorite sport is. Those aren't the best. You want a sample that is random. Convenience, nothing. Think about it this way. I go into my grade book and I select only the people who attended office hours and passed, and I ask them, did you feel like you learned in this class? Oh yeah, I felt like I learned. And I say, every student I teach thinks they learned. It's like, it's not necessarily the best representation of, if I want feedback on how can I improve my course, I want to ask everybody. I don't just want to ask particular people. I want a random sample so I can get an actual valuable information. Now, these are considered bad methods of sampling. Random sample is good, voluntary response and convenient sampling are bad because that personal choice is introducing bias. The people who are responding to the surveys online, they have a personal opinion. There's a reason why they're responding. Convenient sampling, I'm choosing who I want to respond because I have some sort of bias, or I'm trying to gather information to guide it in a way that I can tell people what I want to say without saying it just myself, without me being like, oh yeah, everybody I teach learns. I can say all of my students say that they all learn, or that the class is a huge success. Not that it isn't, but you have to just think about it with that lens of, you want information that is valid. You don't want to skew the data in whatever way. I want it to be true. I want to know, is the class good? Are you learning? Not just, Oh yeah, the class is good. I'm learning without taking anybody's information or without valuing it. I'm gonna pause here so you can head on over to video 2, where we're going to talk about simple random sampling and what our goals are for random sampling.